welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my October wrap-ups for 2023, and I think I made up for my lack of reading in September as I was away for half a month, because October I surprisingly finished 9 books. I do have to disclose that 2 of them were audiobooks, which I listened to while I was doing my runs, but still 7 books is pretty good, and I was very surprised. And I had a pretty good reading month as well. I had 2 books that were 5 stars, 5 books that were 4 stars, and 2 books that were 3 stars, including the audiobooks. So let's get right into it. Oh, I also want to say, as it's October wrap-ups, that I would love to hear if you dressed up for Halloween, what you dressed up as. I had a few costumes this year. Me and my friend did a 5K run in bear onesies. Me and my partner also colored our heads, face painted our heads as soccer balls for our soccer game that happened on Halloween. And I don't know if I have a photo because we're doing our Halloween party this year is after Halloween by the time I edit this video, but we also are dressing up as a pair of feet as a couple's costume where we're doing it ourselves, these costumes. So if that's done, I'll put it up here as well, but you can at least see my bear onesie and my soccer ball costume. The first book this month was The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This was a 4 out of 5. It was my work book club, and it was super juicy and really fun to read as a group and talk about. This is basically a thriller, and we meet this couple who is high school sweethearts, and basically Marissa, the wife, has infidelity against her husband, so she brings her husband to the therapist to talk about her infidelity and how they can move past it. This was super juicy. There were so many red herrings, so many different characters. I'm like, ooh, like who's the bad guy, who's the good guy? You don't know who you're really cheering for. And I really recommend this book if you're kind of into like domestic thriller, it's juicy, a bit of like cheating scandals. Not that I support cheating in any way, but in this book it was like super juicy. The second book I read this month, or actually listened to, the first book listened to, second book finished, is Empathy by Harvard Business Review. I gave this a 3 out of 5. This kind of popped up at my library on like Libby the app as an audiobook. I've been like in a mood to like listen to books while running, but I only like if it's a memoir or if it's like a non-fiction book. And the reason why I picked this up was I actually was trying to give Matthew McConaughey's memoir a try, but I felt I just couldn't get over his voice and his accent. So I gave up and I picked up Empathy. And this is like a really short read. I really liked it because it was kind of a deep dive into empathy and how it can relate to the workspace, and how, you know, if you're more empathetic, it can really reflect on your team and your coworkers. And it was just really interesting because like for me, I always see empathy as something I do socially as a person in my day-to-day. I never really follow empathy in the workplace and how to relate to my coworkers or my boss to me. And I really enjoyed it. It was a pretty short listen, and I think definitely worth a listen. Kind of treat it like a podcast, you know? The next book I listened to, second audiobook, but for a book of the month, is A Book of Sleep by Dr. Nicole MOSHFEGH, and this was a 4 out of 5. I really like this book because, not to humble brag, but I feel like to come up as humble bragging, so I just want to give a heads up, is I have really good sleep hygiene, and I sleep very well, very consistently, and I fall asleep really quickly, and I have good deep sleeps. But I have lots of friends and family who do not sleep well and really struggle with. So, you know, after listening to the empathy book, I was like, oh, maybe if I listen to how people struggle with sleep, maybe it'll make me be more empathetic to my friends and family that have trouble sleeping, because I have no idea what it's like to struggle with sleeping. And this book was really good because it gave, I believe, like 70 points or 70 reasons why you may have a bad sleep, and in 70 ways on how you can counter that. And it's very factual. It gave strategies, and, you know, it really emphasized that this is why someone can't sleep. This is what could counter that. It may not work for you, but this is something that could work for you. I really liked it because, you know, not only was it given like scientific and medical and physical strategies on how to sleep better, but this book really honed in on the importance of having the practice of mindfulness and gratitude in your day-to-day life, as your overall mental health will help contribute to a good night's sleep. So this book, I don't know if it's a must listen to, but I think if you're someone that's like struggling with sleep, it could be helpful to you. And I don't think she does it in a very condescending tone. The next book I read was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This was also a book club read. I gave this a 3 out of 5. Basically, it's about Jen. It's like late one night. It's a thriller book, sorry. It's a crime thriller. And basically, she sees her like teenage son stab a man to death. And she's like, what's happening? her husband and her son go to the police, and her son's being arrested, and Jen's just so distraught. And then she goes to sleep, and next day she wakes up and it's a day before, and she's like, why did I go back in time a day? Am I supposed to change something? So basically she wakes up, and every day she goes back and back, farther and farther into the past, and she's just trying to figure out like what she's supposed to do to stop her son from stabbing that man to death. This book has a great premise. I thought it was intriguing, but I think this book made me realize that I don't really care for crime thrillers at all. I like thrillers, like domestic thrillers, but I do not like crime thrillers, it seems like. The next book I read was my first 5 out of 5 of the month, as Yellowface by R.F. Kwan. This book was so unhinged in the best way possible, reminding me of Big Swiss by Jen Began. Basically, it talks about these two friends. There's a white girl and an Asian girl, and they're both authors. The Asian girl is super successful. The white girl is aspiring. They both went to school together. Now they're adults in their writing career. The Asian girl chokes one night while they're together, and then the white girl takes her book and publishes it as her own under a new name that's kind of like race neutral. So this book kind of talks about the idea of race, about who has the right to talk about what stories, who can share what stories, and the protagonist was just so unhinged. It was so great. It's kind of like a satire on the book industry, the publishing industry, and also on like the booktube community. Just like a great read, really easy to read, really fun. I definitely laughed out loud a few times. The next book I read was The Seakeeper by Diane Wilson. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think this book is really important to read if you want to learn more about indigenous cultures in North America. And it just talks about the importance of getting in tune with our heritage, our ancestors, learning about the importance of how food relates to our health. And this is historical fiction, and I felt like it was such a good way for me to learn about this part of North American history, and also learn about the agricultural industry and how these big companies come and F up our seeds and have GMOs, genetically modified organics into our food system and all that kind of stuff. This book was just really good about Rosalie, who is indigenous, but then her parents passed away, so then she was fostered and raised by white people, and then she marries a white farmer, and then her white husband dies, and then she has this chance as an adult to discover her roots. It's just a very beautifully written book. The next book I read is called Wayward by Amelia Hart. I also gave it a 4 out of 5, which was a surprise to me because this was a book club book, and I will admit this is not a genre or synopsis I would normally gravitate towards, but I put it in a book club to learn about new things. So I read this book and I really enjoyed it. I went in blind, and basically it's a story of 3 women who are linked together and from 3 different timelines, the 1600s and 1940s and 2019, and how society deems them as weird, and you're not really sure why they're weird, but as we read the book, we learn to find out why they're weird. This is like a magic realism kind of book, and it talks about how like men are really shitty to women across all decades of our existence. And this book was just really great. Even though it was a short book and a standalone like fantasy book, I felt like I really like got lost in the world and the writing, and it was just very whimsical and very nice. And I really enjoyed this book. This book also made me really glad that I'm a person of color, specifically a woman of color, live in 2023 and not in the past. The next book I read was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, 4 out of 5. This is a classic whodunit murder mystery. We follow a huge cast of characters, but the 4 main characters are Joyce, Elizabeth, Ron, and Abraham, who are part of the Thursday Murder Club in this retirement community where they like to solve unsolved crimes from the past. But however, when this book starts, they get a chance to solve a real-life murder that happens in the retirement community. Some man is bludgeoned, classic whodunit situation, and basically they go through all these cahoots with the local police, with local residents of his retirement community, and it's just like such a fun read. Yeah, it was a great book. I definitely will consider reading other books in this series because this is the first of, I believe, 4 books. The last book I read to wrap up my October is the only physical copy I have, because all the other books were either library books or a e-version, but it's Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. This was an easy 5 out of 5. I started it last night. I finished it in one sitting. I grew up with Britney being a big part of like my like, I don't want to say like influence because I'm not like a singer or dancer or anything. But you know, as someone who loves pop culture, she was a big part of that. And yeah, it's just really great to hear her side of the story. And you know, obviously somewhere the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But after hearing years and years of the other side, I'm just so glad she now has a space and place to share her side. Really great to read. If you're into pop culture, this is definitely the book for you. Thank you for watching until the end of my wrap up for October 2023. If you read any of these books, I'd love to hear what you thought down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And also, please write down below your favorite book of October and your least favorite book. And I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.